The forest is quiet. Cold mist clings to the trees. Somewhere in what is now southern France, the sun bleeds through the canopy, a pale disk in a gray sky. A man, slender, long-limbed, with skin like sun-baked clay, steps softly through the undergrowth. A branch cracks. He freezes. Across the clearing, another figure emerges, shorter, broader. Two species, two worlds, one moment. This was the first time humans met humans. For over 2 million years, many kinds of humans walked this earth. Homo erectus, Homo habilis, the mysterious Homo floresiensis, and among them, two species would come to define the final chapters of that ancient saga, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. We often imagine ourselves alone at the top of the evolutionary ladder, but that's a myth. The truth is far stranger. At one point, at least 4 different species of humans coexisted. We weren't alone. We were part of a family, a messy, wandering, war-torn family. Homo sapiens were the newcomers, born under African skies, shaped by deserts and savannas. They had traveled far, pushed by curiosity, survival, and the unknown. Meanwhile, Neanderthals had carved their world into the bones of Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. They knew the cold. They mastered the hunt. They weren't primitive cavemen. They were survivors. But then, the continents whispered secrets. The forests shifted. The ice pulled back. And one day, somewhere in Eurasia, those two species, so alike, yet so different, locked eyes. It wasn't a war. Not yet. It wasn't love either. It was something far more unsettling. Recognition. Because in that moment, staring across the mist, both would have felt something strange, something familiar. Two kinds of humans, meeting for the first time, not knowing that this contact would change everything. Before the strangers arrived, before the first Homo sapiens ever set foot in Europe, the continent already had its people. For over 400,000 years, the Neanderthals reigned across Europe and parts of Western Asia. They weren't visitors, they were natives. Forged by Ice Age winds and endless winters, every cliff, every cave, every valley, they had named it in their own way, with footsteps, with fire. They were not monsters, and they were never our inferiors. In fact, if you met one today, if you looked past the heavy brow, the broad nose, the stocky limbs, you might feel uneasy. Because beneath the differences, there's something human. They buried their dead, they nursed the sick, they cared for the old. They lived in social groups, hunted in teams, and made tools that rivaled our own. Their weapons were simple but effective, short stabbing spears, perfect for close-range combat, crafted stone blades sharp enough to skin a mammoth. They weren't throwing spears from a distance like us, but they got the job done. And their brains? Larger than ours, not just by a little, by volume. But that doesn't mean smarter, just different. They processed information spatially. They had acute visual perception. Some scientists even suspect they were less verbal, but more observant. They could read the land like scripture, spot prey in the snow, track migrations without maps. They painted, they carved. And in a cave called El Castillo, a handprint remains, a ghost on stone, dated to nearly 65,000 years ago. That's right, they were making art, before us. And they weren't as isolated as we once believed. There are signs of long-distance movement, exchange of tools, maybe even trade. They weren't just surviving, they were living. But they were alone. For hundreds of millennia, the Neanderthals were the only humans in Europe. And maybe they thought they always would be. Until, one day, the winds carried a scent they didn't recognize. It likely started with a glint of obsidian. Something sharp, foreign. Not native to this land. Not crafted by Neanderthal hands. They saw the smoke first, rising beyond the ridge, controlled, clean, a new kind of fire. Then came the footprints, narrower, lighter, not the stomp of heavy boots in snow, but the quiet tread of something different. Homo sapiens had arrived. They came not as armies, but as families. Small bands moving northward from Africa, following the rivers, hugging coastlines, chasing herds. They brought more than tools. They brought stories. Unlike Neanderthals, they used long-range weapons, throwing spears, atlatls, even early bows. They hunted from a distance, observed before striking, avoided unnecessary danger. And their art? It didn't whisper, it sang. Where Neanderthals painted symbols and hands, Homo sapiens flooded cave walls with animals mid-leap, hunters with spears, spirits with many eyes. Places like Chauvet, Lascaux, and Altamira exploded with imagination. They used bone flutes to make music, carved ivory into Venus figurines, crafted necklaces from teeth, shells, and amber. But perhaps the greatest weapon they carried was language. Not just grunts, not basic commands, but complex symbolic speech. The kind that tells myths, the kind that builds cultures, the kind that remembers. And so, when Homo sapiens entered Neanderthal lands, they didn't just arrive as animals, they arrived as storytellers. But what happened when they met? Did they fight? Did they flee? Did they sit across the fire and share meat in silence? The archaeological record offers no battlefields, no mass graves. Instead, it gives us something stranger. A child, half Neanderthal, half Homo sapien. Proof that at least once, and likely many times, there wasn't war. There was something else. Contact. The first hybrid wasn't a fluke. She was a signpost, evidence that the meeting of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals wasn't just a clash of species, but a merging of lineages. In the chill of ancient Europe, where glaciers carved through mountains and prey was scarce, survival often blurred the lines. Our ancestors didn't just observe each other across rivers or ridgelines, they approached, they mingled, and eventually they mated. The bones don't lie. A girl's remains in Denisova Cave showed she was half Neanderthal, half Denisovan. In another site, a skeleton bore traces of both modern human and Neanderthal ancestry, only a few generations removed. These weren't one-night encounters. They were patterns, bloodlines, the kind that leave a mark. Today, around 2% of the DNA in most people of non-African descent comes from Neanderthals. That's not an archaeological theory, it's a biological fact. You carry them in you, in your immune system, in your skin, even in your sleep cycle. But these unions weren't always peaceful. There's evidence of violence, fractured skulls, burned campsites, mass graves. Maybe not every meeting ended in understanding. Some likely ended in silence. Yet from all this, war, alliance, survival, something strange emerged. A hybrid world, a tangled human tapestry. And that's where the lines begin to blur. Because when two species intermingle, what do we call their offspring? Hybrids, survivors, or simply people? We once imagined evolution as a ladder, each rung a step closer to us. But this was not a ladder. This was a web. And in that web, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals wove something new, something that still echoes in us, in our blood, in our bones, in our names, whispered through time. When scientists first cracked the human genome, they expected it to read like a clean manuscript. One species, one story, all Homo sapiens. But hidden in the folds of our DNA were ghostly signatures, fragments that didn't belong. Tiny sequences whispered of another presence, then another. It was as if voices from the Ice Age had been sealed into our blood, waiting for the right instruments to hear them. And when they did, the past roared back. Neanderthals, Denisovans. Two names pulled from bone fragments and cave dust, suddenly alive again through our chromosomes. For decades, they were thought extinct, their stories buried beneath layers of time and ash. But now they're coded into us, in your skin's response to sunlight, in how your body handles infection, even in how your brain processes fear. Every time you breathe through a high-altitude wind in Tibet, Denisovans are with you. Every time your immune system recognizes a viral invader, Neanderthals may be standing guard. These aren't relics, they're reinforcements. They shaped the humans we are, not through conquest, but through inheritance. And this is where the story turns personal. Because if you are of European or Asian descent, roughly 1 in 50 lines of your genetic code comes from Neanderthals. If you're Melanesian or indigenous Australian, up to 5% of your DNA may belong to the elusive Denisovans, humans no living person has ever seen, yet who still live on, in you. These are the ghosts in our veins. Not specters to be feared, but ancestors to be acknowledged. They changed us, and in doing so, they refused to be forgotten. Every heartbeat, every breath you take, carries a rhythm that started in a world long gone, but not lost, never lost. You are not Homo sapiens alone. You are a mosaic, a memory made flesh, a living, breathing testament to a tangled family tree that stretches into the dark. No one knows the exact moment the last Neanderthal looked up at the sky. No one knows what they were thinking, or if they knew they were the last. It might have been quiet, just another cold twilight in Ice Age Europe, the wind creeping over the steppe, the fire sputtering low, a child asleep in furs, a hunter returning without prey. Nothing dramatic, just another day. And yet, the end of a species. For over 300,000 years, Neanderthals had endured. Through glacial winters, volcanic eruptions, massive mammoths and saber-toothed cats, they adapted, survived, even thrived in a world most modern humans wouldn't last a week in. They carved tools with purpose, hunted with strategy. They buried their dead with care, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with pigments. They painted cave walls. They wore pendants. They had culture. They had memory. They had each other. And then, in a geological blink, they were gone. Not wiped out in battle, not hunted to extinction, just disappeared. Archaeologists call it replacement, a cold, clinical word that masks the weight of what happened. Because as Homo sapiens spread into Europe, the Neanderthal world began to contract. Sites once full of their tools grew empty. Their camps vanished from the record. By around 40,000 years ago, their footprints stopped. But here's the twist. They didn't all die. Not completely. Because their story didn't end with their bones. It continued. In us. Every person today with a trace of Neanderthal DNA is proof that even as they faded from the world, they passed something on. A memory encoded in molecules. A spark that didn't go out. The last Neanderthal may have died under a sky of stars, but they didn't vanish. Not entirely. They walked into us. We like to imagine ourselves as the main character, the apex, the final form. But for most of our story, we weren't alone. There were others. Not monsters, not aliens, humans. Different, yes, but not so different that we couldn't understand their gaze or their grief. As Homo sapiens moved out of Africa, we encountered them. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, and maybe more we haven't yet found names for. Imagine a time when 3, maybe even 4, human species walked the Earth together, sharing forests, rivers, hunting grounds, and sometimes, something more. Sometimes it was curiosity. Sometimes it was love. And sometimes it was the child of both. Geneticists today have found the evidence scattered in our genomes. Whispers of old encounters, embedded like ghost code. People from Papua New Guinea and indigenous Australians carry Denisovan DNA. Europeans, Asians, and Native Americans carry Neanderthal DNA. Some ancient remains, like Denny, the girl with 3 lineages, carry it all. Each fragment is a fossil of connection. Proof that long ago, we didn't just see the others, we embraced them. But we didn't stay equal. Because slowly, one by one, the other humans began to vanish. Was it climate, disease, violence, or something subtler? Maybe it wasn't a war of spears, but a war of time. Homo sapiens had something different. Larger groups, better communication, faster innovation, a spark that caught and spread. The others couldn't keep up, and so the world grew quieter. Fewer camps, fewer languages, fewer songs around the fire, until only one kind of human remained: us. And yet, we are not pure. We are mosaics. Every one of us carries echoes of those who came before. Not just Homo sapiens, but the others too. The cousins we outlived, the family we forgot. We walk this earth believing we're alone, but in our blood, in our bones, in our dreams, we remember. In the end, the question lingers like smoke after fire. If we weren't the only humans, If Neanderthals could speak, if Denisovans could love, if Homo floresiensis could build tools and bury their dead, then what truly made us different? What made us the ones who survived? Was it intelligence? That's what we'd like to believe. But Neanderthals had brains just as big, sometimes bigger. They made art, built fires, lived through ice ages. They cared for the injured. They mourned their dead. Was it violence? Maybe. But the evidence is messy. It seems we interbred more than we fought. Maybe it was numbers. Maybe it was cooperation. Maybe it was just dumb luck. A storm that missed us but swallowed them. A fertile valley we reached first. A virus they couldn't survive. The truth is, there may never be a single answer. Because evolution isn't fair. It doesn't choose the best. It just chooses who lasts. And we did. We lasted. But survival isn't victory. It's burden. We are the last of a lineage that once branched and bloomed like a forest. And now we carry it all. Their memories, their genius, their extinction. We carry the songs no one sings anymore. The faces no one paints. The graves no one tends. So what makes us human? Maybe not our tools, not our speech, not even our art. Maybe it's the fact that we can remember, that we can wonder about the ones who came before, that we can grieve them, and in grieving, honor them. So when you look in the mirror, know this: you're not just one species. You're a chorus of ancestors. You are Neanderthal. You are Denisovan. You are Sapiens. You are the story that survived, but not alone, never truly alone. So if this story echoed something in you, a flicker of ancient memory, a chill at the thought that your blood is older than time, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to Ancient Whispers, where we bring the forgotten voices of humanity back into the light. Like the video if it stirred your curiosity. Share it with someone who still believes we were always alone. And drop a comment. What part of this journey stayed with you the most? Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep wandering, keep wondering, and keep listening to the echoes.